Good afternoon and welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Ladi Williams right here in Lagos. Here's what's coming up in the next 55 minutes. And Zimbabwe mine workers are set to get $3.55 salary increment. And Egypt has allocated $1.18 billion for extra energy imports, seeking to eliminate scheduled power cuts. Plus, Volkswagen is set to invest $5 billion in Rivian, Tesla's competitor, amid rising EV market competition. It's great to have you join us on the show right now. Let's start off with the oil market. Gold. Let's look at what's happening with precious metals at this point. 0.44% down. That's what we have for gold this afternoon, $2,320 per ounce. We're seeing investors awaiting that crucial U.S. inflation data due this week, which could offer more clarity on the timing of Federal Reserve's first interest rate cut this year. Investors want to know when. When are they going to get that first cut this year? For silver, we're seeing that $28.93 per ounce, up 0.25%. And we're seeing palladium trying to get back above that $1,000 psychological level, but it's up 1.26%, shining more than the other metals at this point. Let's get a check on the oil market now. We see oil prices inch up today, nearing their highest level in almost 2 months, driven by forecasts for an eventual inventory drawdown during the third quarter peak summer demand season. We're seeing geopolitical risk also and conflict in the Middle East weighing on the market at this point. But we're seeing prices up 0.84%, big jump there, almost 1% jump for Brent, $85.72 a barrel. And we see WTI crude, that's the U.S. grade, that's trading at $81.58 a barrel, also up 0.93%, the biggest mover right there in the oil market. To other stories now, the federal government should start borrowing for at least 6 months. And this should be the next strategy to save Nigeria from the burden of debt servicing, according to Director General of the Economic Think Tank Center, Professor Emmanuel Abolo. Professor Abolo says this is the time to diversify the revenue base of the economy and cut cost of governance. Take a listen.
If you look at the actions, I will say the actions of government in terms of the types of funding, expenditure on certain items, and you now match that against what is happening to the people of this country, people are beginning to ask, must you borrow money to do all of these things? And there transparency, issue of transparency in governance is very important. If you say you borrowed 100 billion, can you show us the benefits of this amount that you have? Can we be transparent? Tell us, let us see the benefits in concrete terms that is verifiable. That is the issue. But I was just mentioning the issue of cost of governance. Let us reduce the cost of governance. Or else your report, is nowhere to be found after several decades. Can we reduce the cost of governance? Must we really borrow? If we don't borrow in 6 months' time, are we going to really die? And the answer is no.
All right, now to our first conversation. We were talking about bridging Nigeria's infrastructure gap. We've spoken about that a lot on this show, and was also talking about the prospects for tunneling and making use of Nigeria's underground space. Let's see how far the government is adopting this technology now. Joining us is Dr. Elena Kiroti, Managing Director in Ground Consulting and Strategy in France, and Abidemi Agua, President, Nigerian Tunneling Association. Great to have you both on the show today.
Thank you for hosting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to start with you, Abidemi, at this point. I'm going to put up a slide now. We see Nigeria's public debt stock in the first quarter of 2024. We're at over 120 trillion naira from 97 trillion in the fourth quarter of 2023. I know we've been talking about, on-the-ground infrastructure at this time, and we've racked up all this debt, up till now. And I'm wondering, give me an estimate of how much of this money would have been able to work out the whole underground infrastructure in Nigeria as a whole. How much of that money would have been used for this?
So thank you very much for that question.
Right.
So in terms of infrastructure, there's no silver bullet. And I would like to paint to you a global picture, just to give you a wider context of how that money would have been relevant in terms of the integration of underground space use. So in 2019 and 2023, the International Tunneling and Underground Space Association published 2 market surveys. The two surveys show that there was an increase by 10% from 120 billion euros to 170 billion euros over a period of 3 years. Comparison over 3 years, and obviously that translated to 6,600 kilometers of tunnel constructed globally between 2020 and 2022. 2022 accounted for 7,500 kilometers of tunnel, so you can understand that COVID had a significant role to play in this regard. So the global market, in terms of tunneling and underground space use, where civil engineering actually captures 20% of that market, of the global construction market, which sits at 2.2 trillion euros, actually stands at 2.2 trillion euros, actually stands at where 7% of that market is attributed to tunneling. And so we can then extrapolate from these how much impact that would have had on the tunneling market. But to
121 trillion.
121 trillion.
How much of that would have built all the underground infrastructure?
So you can see that the global construction market, or the global civil engineering market, is was basically attributed to 2.2 trillion euros.
2.2 trillion euros. Okay.
And so you can basically extrapolate
how much we can do the exchange rate at this point.
Exchange rate. So, but then bringing it down to GDP. Okay, so the global GDP. Tunneling actually captures 1.6% of the global GDP for tunneling and underground space construction. And if we give an example of China, where the GDP in China, tunneling captures 5.2% of that, and in Africa we have just 0.2% of the global market, where tunneling captures just 0.2% of the market in Africa. So we can see that from the global context, how much of that finance would have made a lot of driven. Of course, we can attribute it to the fact that there are different factors that probably would have influenced that. You can talk about inflation and all the other financial factors that would address that would have enabled or caused that.
Right.
And maybe even if it is a small percentage, but it's maybe useful to stress out that in the small percentage there is a big strategic project for Europe and Africa, that is the connection of the two continents through the Tunnel of Gibraltar, and this is worth to mention because it's one of the most challenging projects that the professional will face in these markets, and Africa will play an important role in that one.
Right. I was going to come to you, Elena, but definitely, looking at the way Nigeria is set up, at this time, we're not done with our overground infrastructure, at this time. But talk to me about the importance right now of developing underground infrastructure for a country like Nigeria, at this time.
Well, as a professional, I worked all around the world in the last almost 30 years, and everywhere there is a growing economy, there is a growing demand for the use of the underground space, because the cities are increasing, and the data with Abidemi is more familiar with the data from Nigeria.
Well, the population is rising fast.
If I just add to that, so of course we talk about the urbanization rate in Africa, which is currently at 45%. Population in the next 20 years estimates that 1 in 4 people in the world will be an African. And you're looking at the footprint of a city like Lagos, where we have 24 million people. That is rising. Without any significant increase in the footprint of the city. How do we then manage the infrastructure deficit that we have in terms of the spatial challenges we have in the city? Underground space has to come into play here for water, for sewage, for multimodal transportation, and You talked about how Nigeria is real. I actually say Nigeria is long overdue as a result of that, because you look at the opportunities that we stand to benefit from land value capture by creation of transit-oriented developments, creating multimodality in terms of transportation nodes. Lagos State government is already doing that in some ways, where you have intersections, where you have the water interface and water transportation interfacing with rail, interfacing with bus, rapid transport. But adding another layer of metro transportation to that in a metropolitan city as Lagos will take the socioeconomic indicators or factors of the city to another level. So I would say that Lagos State is, and as a matter of fact, Nigeria as a whole is overdue the integration of tunneling and underground space.
Nigeria is ready also, because Nigeria is a part of the countries that are interested by a new huge transportation project, that is the Abidjan-Lagos superhighway, with the client, where the client is ECOWAS, and in which the client is already pushing the designers to think about the underground solutions. For example, in Ghana, for the bypass of the capital city of Accra, there are real thoughts about the possibility to go underground and to save important land for other uses in urban spaces. So I would say that Nigeria is ready, and Nigeria is already collaborating in programs in which the use of underground space in Africa for infrastructure is pushed.
Well, I guess investment is one thing, but working on this underground projects, I believe that's another. And I'm wondering how much disruption, this would bring to the built environment, at this time, because we're still dealing with, traffic gridlocks and major cities having just one way in, one way out, at this point. So how much disruption do you think this would bring if we actually start developing this right now?
Well, I wouldn't say it would bring about disruption. I would say it would be an enabler for us to have a more resilient and a more well set out spatial fabric in the city. Because what tunneling and underground space does is it gives you the opportunity to integrate.
Because I'm talking about while the constructions are ongoing. Let's say we start, going full on into the underground space at this point. I'm wondering, this might bring some kind of disruption, to the built environment.
From a professional point of view, and Dr. Elena would also corroborate with that, and that it actually it gives you more flexibility in terms of construction, in terms of how you construct compared to what is happening on the surface, because the footprint of impact is significantly smaller than constructing on the surface. What you need to do is to ensure that you have all the engineering protocols in place to manage whatever interface you have. But that is the reason we go underground. It's less disruptive, more flexible, and in the long term, it gives you more socioeconomic value because of the lifespan of the infrastructure itself, which is deemed to be generally over 100 years.
So there's not much pain while construction, is ongoing, underground to the surface.
Less pain than construction on the surface, definitely.
This is all this is very interesting, the question you ask, because it will be a question that, having seen a few major public clients, is a recurrent question. What about disruption? What about risks? How we manage that? And us, as an international tunneling association, we have this task with the member nations to grow the awareness of decision makers on how nowadays in other countries, in other contexts, the technology has been developed so that we are nowadays able to control all these kind of disruptions and to program for that and to take them into account and to find technical solutions for that. So the risk should not be, and the disruption should not be anywhere a parameter for decision.
Okay. All right. I'm sure you've been around Africa. Talk to me about what countries you'd say are leading now when it comes to underground infrastructure.
Well, I would say there are different kind of infrastructures that they are using underground. Abidemi was mentioning the hydropower. We cannot forget the mine industry. The mines are a sister activity where the underground is used with different factor of safety, different construction method, but definitely there is a know-how there that is hidden by the statistics that Abidemi was mentioning at the beginning that are only dealing with the infrastructure world. So I would say there is already a background in hydro and in mines. And then there are African countries that are appearing as member nations nowadays in the International Tunneling Association. So maybe you want to know what the International Tunneling Association is.
Of course.
Of course. So this is an association that dates back in 1974. So this year we celebrated the 50th anniversary in Shenzhen in China. We were both there.
50 years.
50 years of existence of this organization that is a non-governmental, no-profit organization with almost 80 member nations. That's and where professionals from all the world collaborate to exchange about underground projects, to exchange about technology, to consolidate the best practice, to write recommendations that go back to the member nations as a guideline, and to make to grow the awareness about the underground space. And back in 2000, within the ITA, there was a committee that was created, that is the ITA-SET, that is the Committee for Education and Training, because the profession is feeling that there is a gap, especially in member nations that are coming from growing countries, for educate people to underground space. And so these training programs, they are built together with the member nations to address the underground space according to the needs with tailored trainings.
Right.
To just quickly add to that, so obviously there's a Nigerian Tunneling Association, as we've mentioned here previously on the program, and we basically approach this strategic development with 3 pillars. So the pillar of awareness, education, and capacity development, and we approach that from a top-down, bottom-up approach where we speak to decision makers in terms of what you talked about, in terms of knowledge and awareness from a decision-making point of view, and it's all about education, creating awareness and capacity development, and we're doing that also by interfacing with the academia and also the private sector.
Quite interesting. Well, at some point, I'd really love to use underground spaces at some point, in Nigeria. We'll keep watching and see how the government, puts funds towards that. It was great having this conversation with you both. Thank you so much, Elena Kiriet, Managing Director, In-Ground Consulting and Strategy, and Abidemi Agwo, President, Nigerian Tunneling Association. Thank you
very
both
much,
so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll head straight to the markets. That's the moment to stay with us. Well, as the trading month, June, winds down, we'll take stock of what's been going on in the markets locally and globally at this point. And we have Willie Bong with the details at this point. Good to have you.
Yes, I'll say it's not the last trading day of the week. We have 2 more days.
Yeah, but the month is winding down at this point.
Yeah, hopefully we get some green dots on the NGX, because right now it's just been blowing red. And we've seen green at intraday today, but we're just wondering if that can be sustained.
Can 100,000 hold for June?
For June. Oh, we're still at 99. We've not hit that 100.
Not far off.
We've not regained it, really regained it. But when we do, hopefully we can take June and move to July and start off on a very, good note, because right now it's not looking that great. But we'll see if we can close in the green, if this can be sustained. But let's just see how all the markets are doing. So we're seeing major equities in Africa. Sentiments were mostly positive at intraday. Nigeria's NGX, as I was speaking with Ladi, is in the green at intraday. At the time I took it, at midday, hopefully It's still in the green, 99,342 points. And now South Africa, intraday, also doing not bad, positive 0.4%. Let's look at Egypt's EGX30 and see how it's doing at intraday. It was up 0.35% at intraday. And meanwhile, Kenya's stock markets closed Tuesday's trading session in the red. That's the only downer there, but that's from yesterday's session. We'll see how this index closes today. But let's check in on activities at the NGX now. Let's get more on what's going on there, what's driving sentiments, what's making it go back to the green, if we can sustain that. And we have Azizat, our Onuga Securities Analyst, Parthian Securities Limited. Good afternoon, Azizat. Good to have you on the program. Azizat, yesterday, 2 days ago, let me just say, we've been tracking O&O and Dangote Sugar, to be precise. And they've been having back-to-back, investors have been taking profit back-to-back, sell-offs have been happening for those two stocks. But I want to just tell us at intraday now if that is still persisting.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Okay, so today at intraday, we actually saw something interesting happen, especially with O&O. We saw it decline, yesterday and the day before, but today it was up by around 8%, closing at, it's not even closing, it's still trading at 1350 from the 1250 closed at yesterday. And we feel like the driver in this is because of the high trading possibility of that stock due to the volatility. So what's most likely happened is, people who probably entered at lower entry points yesterday and the day before can as well sell right now. So the thing that this particular stock was trading as high as 1580 last week, the upside potential is obviously still there. So we expect to see maybe still go a bit up and volatile during the week, good for trading. While for Dangote Sugar, it was actually up today from yesterday, though marginal, not enough to change the price, although it's trading at 42.75 from 42.50 that I closed at yesterday. And given the fact that they already made an announcement today for a 200 billion multi-instrument issuance program with the SEC, that might also be driving some sentiment towards that. However, what we don't know yet is if their 150 billion commercial paper scheme that they had already started this year is also inclusive in the 200 billion. Right, given the fact that the 200 billion can be a mix of different securities, including commercial papers. So, we need to just look and see what we have on that.
For O&O, I'd probably want to say that maybe because of the court hearing, the shifting of that court hearing, maybe that's why we've seen that negative sentiment. I know you probably don't agree with me there, but I'm thinking investors are not happy with that decision. But looking at Dangote Sugar, you mentioned the 200 billion multi-securities program, insurance program. That shift now, the shift to the debt market to finance the company, to raise capital, is this going to make any change in their merger with NASCON, which was suspended? Is that still on the table? Is that offer still on the table for investors, do you think?
Okay, so the major reason for the suspension of the merger in the first place was actually because of Dangote Rice. The SEC said that it was not operational enough, especially for the rates at which they wanted to merge these companies. However, Dangote Sugar, they've had a vision, Dangote Sugar for Nigeria master plan, where they actually plan on increasing their capacity to about 1.5 million tons per annum. And this was already in motion even before the suspension was announced, right? So they recently acquired about 120,000 hectares of land from the 50,000 that they've been operating on. And I feel like they would actually need capital to be able to use the land that they have acquired. How that is going to affect the merger is not very clear, right? What might then happen is that a revaluation might be done based on these new developments, based on the fact that there's some debt issuances. When they say multi-instrument issuance, we might even see, some equity type issuance in the midst of that. That is for Dangote Sugar as its own company. But as the proposed Dangote Foods Group, that is something that is more of a strategic decision. And from a market point of view, we can just, speak to the growth potential of the one company, which is Dangote Sugar.
I do know that investors and a lot of market players want answers with regards to the merger. A lot of people are antsy at the moment and wondering, will this happen? Will this not happen? Azizat, I wanted you to give us answers very soon. I'll be bringing you on for that. But how do you see the market closing today? Do you think we can sustain this positive trend, or do you see the market going in the red?
I think we should be able to sustain this till the end of the day because, I mean, right now the market is at 0.11. It's gone down from the intraday levels. We saw it yesterday and the day before yesterday closing negative of 0.09. And if by this time, except something dramatic happens, we might see sustain these levels, given the fact that key drivers such as Access, Owando, as well as First Bank are trading positively and are doing some level of volume. So we feel like this can be retained till the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Azizat Awunuga. I'm going to hold you to that. So I'm going to keep an eye out, keep my eyes peeled for that green close. I'm going to call you after this. Thank you so much, Azizat Awunuga, Securities Analyst with Parking Securities Limited. Now we'll turn to major stocks in the Gulf now. That's in the Middle East, where it was mostly positive at intraday. We see Abu Dhabi's benchmark index edged up 0.05% and Dubai's index bouncing back after 2 sessions of losses. Now the Abu Dhabi and Dubai's indexes traded 0.05% and 0.02% each. Now still within the region, we see Saudi's index dropping 0.5%, and this was pressured by losses in the IT, finance, utilities, and materials sectors. Now look at Qatar now. We see intraday numbers in the green, and this was supported by gains in the real estate investment company Eshraq Investment and the First Abu Dhabi Bank. That's the UAE's largest lender. Now investors in the region are waiting the U.S. personal consumption expenditures, that's PCE price index, and we know the Federal Reserve's, it's one of their favored gauge for inflation, and it's due on Friday. And this could provide further clues if the Fed is going to cut rates. That part, what investors are waiting for. And we also know that most Gulf currencies are pegged to the dollar, and any change to the U.S. monetary policy is usually followed by the central banks of Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar. So let's look at the U.S. and see how that market performed. In early trade today, we see the Dow Jones futures there rose in early trade, except for the Dow Jones. We see the S&P 500 up 0.12% and rebounding from that rough start in the week. And we see the Nasdaq futures also up in early trade 0.27%. Dow Jones is down 0.05%. Now we're looking at these numbers and the performance, especially for Nvidia, which rebounded 7% after this back-to-back sell-offs it's been getting. But hoping that to sustain, investors are really buying the dip there. But let's see how much more the performance was yesterday with our correspondent Maria Bird.
The U.S. stock market was mixed on Tuesday, as the Dow Jones was down at 0.8% and the Nasdaq was the total other direction, up at 1.3%. And the Dow Jones was also a bit up at 0.4%. It is clear that many investors are watching to see what will happen over the next days and weeks ahead. Companies like Navient, the AI blue chip, is showing an upward swing and making many investors hopeful that we will see some rebounding and some continued upward mobility in the Nasdaq. But only time will tell as to what will happen for the rest of the week for the U.S. stock market.
Thanks, Maria. Now let's see how Asian markets performed, how they closed today's trading session. They were mostly up. Semiconductor and related stocks jumped after Nvidia rallied overnight. That is a good move for investors. Investors are really happy. Now also we saw the higher inflation data coming in from Australia, and that's for a third straight month. Let's look at Japan's Nikkei 225 and see how it performed. It was up 1.26%. Japan has hit a 3-month high now. That's the highest level since April the 9th. And now let's look at the other markets there. South Korea and Kospi gained 0.64%. We also see in Shanghai also up to close the market 0.76%. We see the S&P ASX 200 500. In Australia, down 0.71%. As I mentioned, it was dragged down by the retail trade stocks, which was, the index was the only one in negative territory throughout Asia. Australia's headline inflation, I mentioned, for May came in at 4%, and that's compared to 3.6% that was recorded in April. And core inflation rate also came in at 4%, higher than the 3.8% expected by economists. And this higher than expected inflation, as with any other country, could spur the Reserve Bank of Australia to raise interest rates. And that's not what investors are looking out for right now, especially for equities traders, except for the debt market. I'm sure Laddie's got something to say about that. You're looking at now the Reserve Bank of Australia is going to be thinking of cutting rates, and other banks, the Bank of England is thinking of, maybe just holding or going to probably say they're going to cut rates later, or they're going to just say maybe like lower rates. Many people just don't want rates to keep going up. So they're going to hike rates or they're going to cut rates.
Investors just have to be patient, at this point. Every investor wants them to start cutting rates, but they cannot start just yet, even though they're hitting their targets.
Yes.
Some are already around their inflation targets at this point, but we still have to make sure it's at the sweet spot.
Except in Africa, we're not seeing that much happening in Nigeria yet.
Not yet. We know Ghana, they did lead the pack in Africa, but we've seen how that's impacting the economy at this point. But we'll see. Who knows? At some point, Nigeria will join the rate cutting. I'll
be waiting for that.
We'll see that. We'll see that happen at some point. Thank you so much, Will, for the details there. All right, let's get a check on what's happening in London. We have Juliana join us from our London studio. Great to have you, Juliana. So we see data out from the ONS shows that European job seekers are turning away from the UK after Brexit. Tell us more about this.
Quite interesting data, which actually has been released by Indeed, which is an online recruitment company. And they've been looking at the changing dynamics of the labour market as it pertains to the UK, but global recruitment from across the world. So what they've done is they've compared two lists looking at where people around the world are coming from if you want to work in the UK. And they've compared a list that was compiled in 2016 to what it looks like in 2024. And if you look at the list in 2016, most people that were looking for jobs in the UK were coming from America. They were coming from Ireland, because, of course, Ireland has a treaty with the United Kingdom about the free movement of people that predates any Brexit agreement. So if you're Irish and you want to work here, that's fine. And then, of course, making up the rest of the top 10 were mostly European countries, right? Fast forward 8 years and a very tumultuous divorce from our European neighbours, and the list is completely different. In fact, Ireland is completely out of the top 10, which again is quite interesting because if you're Irish, you don't need a passport to come into the UK and you can work and live here freely. But 8 days away from a general election, the sentiment around the free movement of people and migrants coming into the country looking for work has been a key battleground. And it certainly, if you look at this data, appears to have put off potential Irish workers. Also, as well, a lot of European nations have also dropped off the list, which goes back to what you were saying about Brexit. So in terms of like the top 4 places around the world where people live looking for work in the UK is India, America, Pakistan and Australia. Quite interestingly as well, Nigeria has made it into the top 10 list as well as countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So it just goes to show how Brexit has changed the labour market in the UK. I think it was earlier in the week, Laddie, we were talking about the fact that there are over 850,000 vacancies in the UK. Right. It is really a good time to find a job here. The problem is a lot of people don't have the skills. And again, because immigration, and we've seen from James Cleverly, the Home Office Minister, just how certain people are being treated when they come here. It's pulling a lot of people off, particularly across Europe. And of course, after Brexit, we know that the Conservative government have tried their best to forge new ties in the Commonwealth and much further afield in Asia. And that's being reflected in terms of people wanting to work, study and live in this country.
Right. Well, I guess we'll keep tracking the jobs market right there in the UK. Very sensitive market at this time. But let's talk about theme parks now. I'm sure you like theme parks. Universal Studio, they're proposing to build a theme park in Bedford at this point. It's going to be the biggest one in Europe, I think.
Yeah, of course I love theme parks. You can't be a parent, laddie, and not love theme parks. So this is going to cost us a lot of money. That's if it does go through, because this is very much at the consultation stage. So this is Comcast, right? They're the parent owner of Universal, and what they've done is they've bought a huge piece of land in Bedford, which is kind of just north of the capital, and basically what they're proposing is that they are going to build a Universal Studio similar to what Americans have been enjoying in Orlando, Florida. So that's going to be huge if it does get the green light. According to all of the data in the press release and the consultations, this is going to create 20,000 construction jobs as well as 8,000 new positions. But of course, you know, if you think of the size, or if you can just imagine the size of the Universal Studios in Orlando, it is a huge project, which is why it's going to take a minimum of 5 to 6 years to build, and it is going to cross multiple sectors. In fact, I don't think Comcast can do this without the green light and the support from the UK Department of Culture, Media and Sport, because we are going to have to expand roads. There are going to have to be new train links. But this is a good thing. Obviously, it's good for kids. Perhaps not good for parents' pocket, but also really good for the UK economy, right? London, of course, is a top tourist destination, but having a global theme park akin to what we've seen in Florida and in Paris will be amazing. So yeah, really good story.
Yeah, massive project there, and parents need to get their pockets ready once that kicks off. All right, let's talk about the markets now. How's it looking at intraday in the UK?
Good, pretty good, tip-top shape. We're awaiting those all-important GDP revised figures on a Friday. Also, England managed to top their leaderboard. You didn't ask me about England.
Yeah.
Laddie, which is it's an important story because, of course, when England are playing, the services GDP goes up. It does, because people spend so much in the pubs, don't they? That's helping market sentiment. The all share is up 0.26%. FTSE 100, the blue chip, that's up by 0.27%, and the FTSE 250, the domestic market, that's up by 0.11%. In the currencies market, the British pound is currently trading down against the US dollar by 0.16%, though up against the euro by 0.08% and up against the Japanese yen by 0.08%, laddie.
All right, go England. Try and bring it home this time. Thank you so much, Juliana. All right, let's take it on to Europe now. So European aerospace giant Airbus is giving up production targets, mainly due to missing parts. Join us now with more about what this means for Airbus and the aviation industry in Europe. We have DW correspondent Chipondo Chimbelu. Great to have you, Chip. So tell us more about about Airbus's woes.
Thanks for having me. Well, Laddie, aircraft manufacturer Airbus said it now plans to deliver 770 commercial aircraft this year instead of the 800 it had forecast earlier. Now, that is bad news for Airbus because it only gets paid when planes are delivered to its customers, so that will put a dent in its finances. And it is not the only challenge the aircraft maker is facing. Airbus is booking a charge of 900 million euros for its satellite business due to what it called technical and economic challenges in the telecommunication and observation satellite industry. Now, as a result, Airbus has lowered its operating profit forecast for this year by 1 billion euros to 5.5 billion euros. Now, the news sent Airbus shares to the lowest drop in day trading in 2 years on Tuesday. And the outlook regarding Airbus's production woes doesn't look good either. The situation is so bad that CEO Guillaume Faury said that Airbus would have had to deliver planes without engines had it wanted to stick to its production goals.
All right, what does Airbus's production issue, what does it tell us about the aviation industry in Europe?
Well, this tells us that the aviation industry has some supply issues. And aircraft makers have challenges getting the parts they need to make aircraft. And it's not just engines. Aerostructures, which are needed to build a plane frame, and parts for cabin interiors are also missing. Aviation experts say the industry's supply chain has been overstretched for many years. It's also worth noting that demand for replacement parts for older planes is also hurting production. Airbus CEO Faury blamed the lack of cabin parts on the fact that airlines are refurbishing older planes. Now, supply chain bottlenecks are just one of the aviation industry's ongoing challenges. The other one is U.S. plane maker Boeing's slowed recovery from safety crises. The aircraft manufacturer faces legal challenges and is being forced to revamp its quality control process by U.S. aviation authorities. But now, Boeing's rival Airbus doesn't look like it can benefit much from the U.S. plane maker's woes because of its own production challenges. Now, this also means that airlines will have to keep flying their older planes longer than planned. And keeping older planes in the air for longer could also hurt airlines. That's because older aircraft are generally less fuel efficient than newer ones. So that will, of course, raise the cost per mile flown.
All right, Chip, thank you so much for the details right there in Europe. Let's look at some other top stories. Right now, the market sees German automotive giant Volkswagen has announced a significant investment of up to $5 billion in Rivian, a US-based electric vehicle manufacturer that's a rival to Tesla. The deal forms a joint venture enabling Volkswagen and Rivian share technology, and a strategic move as competition amongst EV makers intensifies in Western nations. We see them imposing tariffs right there on Chinese imports. All right, so our next conversation, I will see recently, Nigeria launched a 3MTT program designed to train 3 million technical talents over the next 4 years. But now we'll be looking at a particular segment, which is user experience design, as UX design, and prospects for this segment in bridging unemployment gap and Nigeria's toughest challenges. Joining us now for this conversation is Victor Ademo, who's a UX designer. Great to have you on the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, talk to me about UX designs and why it's important for businesses today.
UX design, I'll give this analogy. Just like you want to build in a house, you need an architect. You need to know the kind of soil you're building on. You need to know the kind of instruments you're going to use. The same thing with UX design as regards products. And so with UX design, we are very focused on the user needs, because the most important person in any organization is a user. They determine if a business keeps running or not. And so their frustrations and their needs is what a UX design designs to meet. So that's the overall way I can explain that.
Right, but how can businesses leverage UX design to, differentiate themselves in a crowded market?
Yeah, we have a very saturated market for a lot of products right now. One of the ways is to have a very good UX experience in terms of it helps in customer retention. It helps in even reducing cost and saving time. So I'll give an analogy with Airbnb. They had issues with revenue generation and even having customer retention, but the need to understand their users made them redesign their website and then understand this is how our users think, and we really need to solve their problems in this manner and in this way, not in the way we are offering a solution, but in understanding what their needs are. So an example would be like most users, when they want to book a house or they want to book a home, they need to understand the demographic of the house, where the house is at. Is it a good neighborhood? How spacious is the house? So experiences like that, having to build it in a digital landscape, makes them build trust and want to use the product. And that's what we do as UX designers.
All right.
Increase trust and save some money.
Fantastic. Great work you guys are doing there. Thank you so much. It's great having you, Victor Adebo, UX designer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, now we're going to head to the markets. We've seen some top headlines in the markets at this point. We see the likes of FTX their repayment plan. We know the exchange, that massive exchange, FTX had issues in the past, and they're having to pay some of those customers that have funds on the exchange. But let's look at the market quickly now. We see there's some green on the screen at this point, predominantly green. There's some little pockets of red at this time, but we're still seeing some struggle there when it comes to Bitcoin and most of the altcoins. You know, once Bitcoin sneezes this market, the altcoins catch a big cold at this time. But let's bring in Rume Dominic, is the founder, Vorum, and Deputy Managing Director at Aviation Industries, joining me right here in the studio. It's been a while. Great to have you,
nice
Rume.
Thank you very much, Ladi, for having me.
Fantastic. And I'm sure you've seen this market, a lot of volatility at this point. Some say it's the miners that are selling from all the profits that they've made, you know, mining Bitcoin. They're also seeing governments actually selling too, like the German government are floating about 900 Bitcoins at this time. How are you seeing all of this?
Yeah, Ladi, the events that have happened in the last 20 hours in the cryptocurrency space, where we saw government selling off over 900 Bitcoins, of which we still had to do an on-chain analysis check on that wallet, where we still have over 46,000 Bitcoins still left in that wallet, right? Is a true reflection of the impact of government and their participation in this cryptocurrency space. It causes a lot of sentiment and price fluctuation. How do I mean? Like when people and investors see that government just sold off 900 Bitcoins, the investor sentiment starts coming in that what's happening in the market? Why is the government selling off so much? Is there something coming that will crash Bitcoin, that will make Bitcoin go to zero?
Maybe some kind of
like zero
black
the next
swan
time.
event.
Yes. Yeah, so that sentiment would make a lot of investors to sell off, and that would see that the price would definitely plummet, just as you have seen it plummet in the last few days.
Right, and when we see price corrections and, you know, drawbacks, everyone comes up with this, is it time to buy the dip? Or you don't want to catch a falling knife, maybe you just wait, maybe it's going to fall even more. What are you seeing? Is this a buy the dip moment or not?
You can't really give a forecast of where the market is going, especially with cryptocurrencies. Like I always say, men lie, women lie, but the charts do not lie. At the moment, we're experiencing a bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the news that Mt. Gox is going to introduce about $9 billion worth of Bitcoin into the market. This is because of the event that happened in 2014 when that particular exchange got hacked. And now they've been able to have a bit of legal resolution to see that all of those Bitcoins is being paid back to their investors. So that news alone might quickly see that some of the investors, some people that are participating in the cryptocurrency market will be scared. However, I don't think it is going to give us a very bad blood and red day in the market. We'll continue to see these greens in the market because it is the bull run season.
It's still the bull run regardless,
yes,
regardless of the big drops we're seeing at this. All right, let's talk about regulation now. We're seeing the Securities and Exchange Commission in Nigeria. They've released a virtual asset provider framework, you know, at this point. How's the Nigerian crypto industry looking at this framework?
Well, in 2022, that's in May 2022, the Security Exchange Commission actually took a step forward in this particular direction. And it is a good one for a lot of cryptocurrency investors and the Nigerian government to see that the Security Exchange Commission, they've been able to provide a framework that we can operate in this particular cryptocurrency ecospace, which means that the users will have much more confidence going into the market and they will be sure that their funds is extremely protected. For me, I see it as a step in the right direction because it would ensure that there is innovation without fear. Because when there's clear path, when there is enough regulation like what we have seen now with this ARIP program, the Accelerated Incubation Program for the virtual asset providers, then you will see that people will be able to innovate without the fear that they will get shut down or they will have something like a Binance situation that has happened in the country. And that is a very good win-win situation for both the virtual asset providers and the retail consumers in the cryptocurrency market.
Right, regulation. Everyone needs protection at this point in most of these markets. Thank you so much. Always great to have you, roommate Dominic, Deputy Managing Director, Aviation Industries, and founder at Voron. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
All right, so there you have it. That's how most of the markets we track are not looking so bad at this point for the crypto market, but we're still seeing a lot of volatility right now. That's the show today. You can visit channelstv.com for more updates. I'm Ladi Williams from the team right here at Channels HQ. It's bye for now.